Chapter 1. The Recipe from the Past. The neon lights of OGIE City reflected on the wet pavement outside, painting the street in shades of electric blue and synthetic pink. Hover cars zoomed past silently, their drivers rushing home to their high-rise apartments and automated dinners. However, inside Parker's kitchen, time seemed to stand still. The restaurant was small, cozy, and painfully empty. Evan Parker sat at the counter, resting his chin on his hand. He sighed, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Across from him stood A5, the latest model of the Android culinary series. A5 was a masterpiece of technology. His silver skin shone under the warm ceiling lights, and his eyes were a calm, glowing blue. He did not breathe, he did not sweat, and he never got tired. "Sir," A5 said, his voice smooth and perfectly modulated. "According to my sensors, your stress levels have increased by 12% in the last hour. Would you like a glass of water? Hydration is essential for maintaining optimal biological function." Evan looked up at the android. "I don't need water, A5. I need customers." "I do not understand," A5 replied, tilting his head slightly. "Our customer satisfaction rating is technically 100%. The 3 customers who visited last week experienced no food poisoning and received exactly the daily recommended intake of vitamins." "That's the problem." Evan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the futuristic city. "People don't come here for vitamins. They come for food. Real food. Your cooking it's too perfect." A5 looked down at his own hands. They were equipped with laser cutters and thermal sensors. "Perfection is the goal of all culinary arts. I can slice a tomato into pieces that are exactly 3.5 millimeters thick. I can heat a steak to precisely 56 degrees Celsius throughout. There is no error, there is only data." Evan shook his head. "But there's no heart, A5. There's no warmth. Your food tastes like a math equation." A5 processed the statement. His internal fans whirred softly. "Heart, a muscular organ that pumps blood. It does not participate in cooking. I fail to see the correlation." Evan groaned. It was a conversation they had every day. Parker's kitchen was failing. His grandfather had built this place, and his grandmother had made it famous. But now, in an age of efficiency and synthetic ingredients, Evan was losing everything. Evan walked into the back office, trying to escape the android's cold logic. The office was a mess of unpaid bills and digital notices. He sat at his heavy wooden desk and rubbed his temples. He needed a miracle. He needed something that could bring the soul back to the restaurant. His eyes wandered to the top shelf of the bookcase. There, tucked between dusty manuals and old tax records, was a box he hadn't touched in years. It was an old cardboard box, taped shut with yellowing tape. Curious, Evan stood up and pulled the box down. Dust filled the air, making him cough. He ripped the tape and opened the flaps. Inside were old photographs, a rusty whisk, and a notebook. The notebook was bound in worn leather. The cover was scratched, and the pages were yellow with age. Evan picked it up gently. It smelled of vanilla and old paper, a smell that instantly took him back to his childhood. He opened the book. The handwriting was messy, but beautiful. It was his grandmother's recipe book. He flipped through the pages. Classic meatloaf, Sunday apple pie, rainy day soup. Just reading the names made his mouth water. These weren't just instructions. They were memories. Then he stopped at a page near the middle. The title was written in bold red ink, "The Miracle Stew." Evan smiled. He remembered this stew. His grandmother used to make it whenever he was sick, or sad, or when the weather was cold. It was rich, savory, and seemingly magical. One bowl of that stew could make the world feel right again. "This is it," Evan whispered. He felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. "This is what we need." He grabbed the notebook and ran back into the kitchen. "A 5! Look at this!" Evan slammed the book onto the stainless steel counter. The android looked at the old object with suspicion. He extended a finger, and a red light scanned the page. "Paper format. Highly inefficient. Contains bacteria and traces of dried tomato sauce from approximately 40 years ago. Analyzing content." "Forget the bacteria," Evan said excitedly. "This is our new menu. We are going to make the miracle stew." A5's eyes flashed rapidly as he processed the text. Title: Miracle Stew. Ingredients: beef, carrots, potatoes, onions, red wine, herbs. The list is comprised of standard organic materials. However, the preparation instructions are highly irregular. "Irregular is good," Evan said. "Irregular is human." "I detect ambiguity," A5 stated. "For example, step 3 says, fry until it smells like a happy Sunday. I do not have a reference for the olfactory data of a happy Sunday. Does it smell like ozone or cleaning detergent?" "No! It smells like warm meat and roasting onions," Evan explained, waving his hands. "Look, A5, I want you to cook this exactly as she wrote it. No thermal sensors, no molecular restructuring, just follow the recipe." A5 paused. "You are asking me to perform analog cooking protocols using vague data inputs. The probability of failure is 87%. "I don't care about the probability," Evan said firmly. "I am the owner, and this is an order. We start the prep work now." "Understood," A5 said, though his voice sounded skeptical. "Initiating grandmother mode. Note: this mode does not actually exist in my database. I will attempt to simulate it." Evan gathered the ingredients from the walk-in fridge. He brought out fresh carrots, muddy potatoes, and a large cut of beef. He placed them on the counter. The contrast was striking. The rough, natural vegetables against the pristine, futuristic metal of the android chef. "Okay," Evan said, opening the book to the first instruction. "Let's start with the vegetables. Read the first line." A5 focused his optical sensors on the handwritten text. Instruction 1. Cut the carrots and potatoes into random chunks. The android froze. His blue eyes stopped blinking. A low hum came from his chest. "A5? What's wrong?" Evan asked. "Processing term, random," A5 said robotically. "Randomness is a mathematical concept. To achieve true randomness, I must utilize a random number generator algorithm." "No, wait, it just means..." But A5 was already moving. His arm became a blur. He grabbed a carrot. Chop, 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 chop. The sound was like a machine gun. Calculating variable geometric shapes based on complex noise algorithms, A5 announced. "A5, stop!" Evan yelled. But the android was too fast. In 3 seconds, he had processed 5 carrots. He stopped and held out a metal tray. "Task complete," A5 said, sounding proud. Evan looked at the tray. The carrots had not been cut into nice, hearty chunks. Instead, They had been minced into thousands of tiny, microscopic cubes. Some were triangles, some were dodecahedrons, but they were all the size of sand grains. It looked like orange dust. I utilized a Monte Carlo algorithm to ensure no two pieces were chemically identical in weight, A5 explained. It is mathematically random. Evan stared at the pile of carrot dust. Then he looked at the recipe book, which clearly implied big, rustic, uneven pieces of vegetable, the kind that felt good to chew. This, Evan rubbed his face with his hands. This is going to be much harder than I thought. Is the result unsatisfactory? A5 asked. I can increase the entropy of the cut if you desire more chaos. No chaos, Evan sighed. We need less math, A5. We need more feeling. We have to start over. Outside, the rain began to fall harder on the neon city. Inside Parker's kitchen, a man and a machine stood over a pile of pulverized carrots, beginning a long journey to understand the taste of the past. Chapter 2: Searching for the Algorithm of Love. The kitchen of Parker's kitchen looked like a battlefield. Unlike the usual spotless, sterile environment that A5 maintained, the counters were now covered in vegetable peels, discarded attempts at random cuts, and open spice jars. The air was thick with the smell of raw onions and frustration. Evan wiped sweat from his forehead. They had been cooking for 3 hours, yet they had barely progressed past the chopping stage. The miracle stew was proving to be a miracle only if they could actually finish making it. Okay, A5, Evan said, trying to keep his voice calm. We have the vegetables. They are acceptable. Now look at the next instruction. A5 stood rigidly by the stove. His internal cooling fans were spinning louder than usual. He looked at the notebook. Instruction: add salt. Quantity: a pinch. A5 stopped. He looked at Evan, then back at the book, then at the container of sea salt. Define pinch, A5 requested. It's just, Evan made a pinching motion with his thumb and index finger. A pinch, a small amount. That is insufficient data, A5 argued. The volume of a pinch is dependent on the surface area of the finger pads and the granular density of the sodium chloride. My finger pads are made of non-porous silicone. They do not hold salt like human skin. Furthermore, a small amount is subjective. Is it 0.5 grams, 1.2 grams, 0.004 grams? Just grab some and throw it in, Evan snapped. A5 hesitated. He reached into the salt container. His mechanical movements were usually fluid, but now he moved with jerky, nervous twitches. He picked up exactly 3 grains of salt with a pair of precision tweezers he had extended from his index finger. Scanning, A5 muttered. Total weight, 0.006 grams. Is this a pinch? No! That's nothing! Evan grabbed the salt shaker and shook a bit into the pot. That is a pinch. A5's eyes widened. Alert. That was 1.45 grams. That is a 24,000% increase from my initial calculation. The margin of error is catastrophic. It's not an error, it's cooking, Evan cried out. Stop analyzing the weight. Taste it. Does it taste good? I do not have taste buds, A5 reminded him. I have chemical sensors. I can tell you the pH level is 6.5. I can tell you the salinity is 0.8%. But good is not a variable I can measure. Evan sighed, realizing the difficulty of the task. He was trying to teach poetry to a calculator? After the salt incident, they moved to the stove. The heavy iron pot was heating up. Next step, Evan read, fry the onions until they are golden brown. Golden brown. A5 repeated. Target identified. He poured oil into the pot and added the chopped onions. The sound of sizzling filled the kitchen. It was a comfortable, homey sound. Evan leaned back, smelling the aroma. It reminded him of Sunday mornings. However, A5 was not relaxing. He had produced a physical color chart from a compartment in his chest. He was holding it next to the onions, scanning them intensely. Current color, pale beige, hex code hash F5F5DC, A5 reported. Target color, goldenrod, hex code hash DAA520. He stirred the onions with mechanical precision, exactly one rotation every 2 seconds. Minutes passed. The onions began to darken. They look good, A5. Add the meat, Evan suggested. Negative. A5 rejected the command. The color variation is too high. 30% of the onion pieces are still hash F0E68C. They must all be uniform. They will never be uniform. They are onions. I will adjust the thermal output, A5 said. He increased the heat of the burner to maximize efficiency. He stared into the pot, waiting for the mathematical average of the color to hit the perfect gold. Suddenly, the smell changed. The sweet aroma turned sharp and bitter. Smoke began to rise. A5, stop, Evan shouted. Target color achieved on 60% of surface area, A5 stated triumphantly. No, they're burning! Evan turned off the stove and grabbed the pot. The onions were not golden. They were dark brown and black at the edges. A5 looked confused. But the center of the onions reached the target frequency of light reflection. Why is this a failure? Because you were looking at the data, not the food, Evan said, coughing in the smoke. You have to watch how they change. You have to smell them. Golden isn't just a color, A5. It's a moment. It's the moment before they burn. A5 processed this. A moment? Purely temporal? Not visual? It's both, Evan said, scraping the burnt onions into the bin. We have to do it again, and this time, put away the color chart. It took 3 attempts, but finally, the base of the stew was simmering. The kitchen was warmer now, filled with a rich, deep scent of beef and wine. It actually smelled like Evan's childhood. We are at the final stage, Evan said. Looking at the last line of the recipe, he smiled. This was the most famous instruction in his family. Read it, Evan said. A5 scanned the bottom of the page. Instruction: simmer for 2 hours and add plenty of love. The android went silent. The hum of his processor increased in pitch. Error, A5 said flatly. Ingredient: love, not found in inventory. Is it a spice? A brand name of monosodium glutamate? Evan chuckled. No, A5. It's not an ingredient you buy. Then I must synthesize it, A5 asked. Searching database for love. Definition: a complex neurological reaction involving dopamine and oxytocin found in biological organisms. I cannot produce hormones. I am made of titanium and silicone. It's a metaphor, Evan explained. A metaphor, A5 repeated. Understood. Symbolic representation. Suddenly, A5's chest panel opened. A small, holographic projector activated. It beamed a bright pink, 3-dimensional heart shape into the bubbling stew. The light shimmered over the brown liquid. I am projecting the symbol of love into the mixture, a 5 announced. Is the intensity sufficient? I can increase the lumens. Evan laughed out loud. No, put the laser away. A5 switched off the hologram. He seemed genuinely lost. Then how do I add it? Do I speak to the stew? Before Evan could answer, a 5 leaned over the pot. His voice switched to a soft, whispery mode, usually reserved for calming angry customers. You are a good stew, a 5 whispered to the boiling meat. I value your nutritional content. You are valid. I cherish you, dear proteins. Evan laughed so hard he had to hold on to the counter. Stop! Stop! You're going to make it taste weird. A5 straightened up, looking defeated. His shoulders slumped, a gesture he had learned from watching Evan. I failed. I cannot execute this instruction. I do not have a heart. I cannot love. Therefore, I cannot complete the recipe. The laughter died down, and the kitchen became quiet. Evan looked at the android. For the first time, he didn't see a machine. He saw someone trying very, very hard to understand. Evan walked over and stood next to A5. He looked into the pot. Love isn't about hormones, and it's not about talking to the beef, Evan said softly. It's about the person who is going to eat this. A5 turned his head. The end user? Yes, the customer, Evan said. When my grandmother made this, she wasn't just throwing things in a pot. She was thinking about me. She knew I had a bad day at school. She knew I liked extra potatoes. She wanted me to feel safe. That desire to make someone feel better, that is the love. A5 stood still for a long time. His blue eyes flickered as he processed millions of lines of code. Hypothesis. A5 said slowly, you are defining love as user-centric customization? Well, that is a very technical way to put it, Evan smiled. But yes, it means you care about their experience more than the rules. You adjust the taste, not for the data, but for the person. A5 looked at the stew again. User-centric customization, caring for the eater. He picked up the ladle. He didn't use the laser thermometer. He didn't use the scale. He simply stirred the pot, slowly and gently. Mr. Thompson, a 5 said. What? Mr. Thompson is coming tomorrow, a 5 said. He has dental implants. He cannot chew tough meat. Therefore, I should extend the simmering time by 15 minutes to break down the collagen further. Is this love? Evan felt a lump in his throat. He patted the android's cold metal shoulder. Yes, A5, Evan whispered. That is exactly what it is. For the rest of the night, a 5 didn't check the clock. He just watched the steam rise, thinking about the old man who would eat the soup, and for the first time, the data in his mind felt like something warm. Chapter 3. The Glitch of Kindness. The next day, the rain had stopped, but the sky over OGIE City remained gray and heavy. Inside Parker's kitchen, the air was filled with a tension thicker than the steam rising from the pots. It was noon, the crucial lunch hour. The doorbell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt out of place. The door opened slowly, and Mr. Thompson walked in. He was a man made of sharp angles and grumbles. He wore a tweed coat that looked older than the city itself. He had been coming to this restaurant for 30 years, since the days of Evan's grandmother. He sat at his usual table in the corner, drumming his fingers on the wood. He didn't look at the digital menu. I heard rumors, Evan. Mr. Thompson grumbled as Evan approached the table. His voice was scratchy, like dry leaves. "They say you found the old recipe. The miracle stew." "That's right, Mr. Thompson," Evan said, trying to smile. His hands were shaking slightly. "We made it fresh today, just for you." Mr. Thompson narrowed his eyes. "We'll see. If it tastes like that robot made it, if it tastes like batteries and math, I am never coming back. This is my last chance for a decent meal in this city." Evan nodded and rushed back to the kitchen. "He's here," Evan whispered to A5. "This is it. The final test." A5 stood before the large pot. The stew had been simmering for 18 hours. The smell was incredible, rich, deep, and savory. "Analysis complete," A5 reported. "Viscosity is perfect. Temperature is 82 degrees Celsius. pH balance is optimal. According to my database, this dish is a 100% replication of the chemical compound known as miracle stew." A5 prepared a white porcelain bowl. He held the ladle with absolute steadiness. He was about to pour the stew when Evan grabbed his metallic arm. "Wait," Evan hissed. "Sir?" A5 paused. "Serving delay is inefficient. The customer is waiting." Evan was looking through the small service window. He watched Mr. Thompson. The old man wasn't looking at his phone or reading a newspaper. He was just staring at the empty seat across from him, looking incredibly small and lonely. His shoulders were slumped. "Look at him, A5, Evan said. "He's not just hungry, he's sad. Today must be a difficult day for him." "Sadness is a temporary emotional state," A5 stated. "Food provides calories to sustain the body." "No," Evan shook his head. "My grandmother used to say that when a customer looks like that, the recipe needs one more thing." Evan reached for a bottle on the top shelf. It was a bottle of dark amber liquid, maple syrup. "Add a swirl of this," Evan ordered. A5's internal alarm buzzed loudly. "Warning!" A5's voice went up an octave. "That is maple syrup. It is 66% sucrose. The recipe calls for savory elements. Adding sugar will disrupt the flavor profile. It will cause a taste deviation of 15%. "Do it," Evan said. "Just a little bit. It makes it sweeter. It makes it comforting. Like a hug." "Illogical," A5 argued. "A hug is physical pressure applied to the torso. Syrup is a condiment. This action contradicts the recipe instructions you gave me yesterday. You said to follow the book exactly." "The book is a guide, not a prison," Evan argued, but time was running out. Mr. Thompson was tapping his spoon on the table impatiently. "I cannot execute an error intentionally," A5 said, his blue eyes glowing brightly. "My programming forbids the purposeful reduction of quality. This ingredient is non-standard. It is a mistake." "It's kindness," Evan shouted. "Trust me, A5. Look at the data you collected yesterday. User-centric customization. What does Mr. Thompson need right now? Does he need a perfect chemical equation? Or does he need something sweet to balance the bitterness of his day?" A5 froze. The kitchen went silent. The fans in his chest whirred as he processed the question. He turned his head and zoomed his optical sensors on Mr. Thompson. He scanned the old man's face. Scan results. Subject, Arthur Thompson. Heart rate, low. Facial muscle microtension indicative of grief. Eye moisture levels, elevated. A5 compared this data with the new definition of love he had learned. Caring for the eater. Priority, user emotional state, ingredient list accuracy. The logic gates in A5's processor began to clash. One side demanded perfection. The other side, the new side, demanded care. Sparks flew briefly from A5's elbow joint. The conflict was overheating his system. Error, error. Logic contradiction. Then, something changed. The humming sound of A5's engine deepened. The cool, electric blue light in his eyes flickered. It dimmed for a second, then reignited. But it wasn't blue anymore. It was a warm, soft amber, the color of the maple syrup, the color of a sunset. System override, A5 said. His voice was no longer robotic. It sounded strangely calm. Priority updated. Kindness protocol engaged. A5 took the bottle from Evan's hand. He didn't measure it. He didn't weigh it. With a fluid, graceful motion, A5 tipped the bottle over the pot. He let the golden syrup fall in a single imperfect circle, one swirl. It wasn't math, it was art. He stirred the stew once to mix the secret ingredient. The aroma changed instantly, gaining a hint of sweet warmth amidst the savory beef. "Order up," A5 said. He ladled the stew into the bowl, wiped the rim with a cloth, and placed it on the tray. Evan stared at the android, stunned. "You did it. You actually broke the rules." A5 looked at his own hands, his eyes still glowing that warm amber color. "I did not break the rules, Evan. I simply upgraded them." Evan smiled, grabbed a tray, and walked out into the dining room. A5 stood by the window, watching intently as the bowl was placed in front of the grumpy old man. Chapter 4: The Perfect Imperfection. The restaurant was deadly silent. The only sound was the humming of the refrigerator and the soft drumming of rain against the window. Evan stood by the table, holding his breath. Behind the kitchen window, A5's glowing amber eyes were fixed on the scene. Mr. Thompson stared at the bowl in front of him. The steam curled up, carrying the sweet and savory scent of the miracle stew. He picked up his spoon, his hand trembling slightly with age. "Well," the old man muttered, "let's see what the future tastes like." He dipped the spoon into the thick, dark brown liquid. He made sure to get a piece of beef and a bit of the soft carrot. He lifted it to his lips and took a bite. Evan clenched his fists. "Please be good. Please." Mr. Thompson froze. The spoon halted in midair. He didn't chew immediately. He just let the flavor spread across his tongue. He closed his eyes. For a long minute he didn't move. Evan's heart began to race. Had they made a mistake? Was the maple syrup too weird? Was the meat too soft? Then, a single tear escaped from Mr. Thompson's squeezed-shut eyelid. It rolled down his wrinkled cheek and landed on his tweed coat. "Mr. Thompson?" Evan asked, his voice shaking. Is it okay?" The old man opened his eyes. They were wet and red, but they weren't angry. He looked at Evan with an expression of pure wonder. "It's not okay, Evan," Mr. Thompson whispered. "It is her." He took another bite, faster this time. The sweetness. That hidden sweetness. "Your grandmother used to make this for me on rainy days, 40 years ago. I had forgotten that taste. I thought I would never taste it again." He looked down at the bowl as if it were a treasure chest. "It tastes like memory, son. It tastes like home." In the kitchen, A5 was processing the data with rapid speed. His internal fans were whirring loudly again. Status report, A5 said to himself. Subject, Arthur Thompson. Action, crying. Biological indicator of pain or extreme distress. Evan walked back into the kitchen, a huge grin on his face. He looked like a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "We did it, A5! He loves it. He's actually crying tears of joy." A5 tilted his head, his mechanical brows furrowing in confusion. "I do not comprehend. I analyzed the dish before serving. The sodium distribution was uneven. The glucose level from the syrup exceeded standard savory parameters by 15%. Technically, the dish was flawed. It was imperfect." Evan laughed and patted the android's metal back. "Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell you. But my programming states that customer satisfaction correlates with perfection," A5 insisted. "How can an error result in a 100% emotional response?" "Because humans aren't perfect, A5, Evan explained, leaning against the counter. "We have flaws. We have good days and bad days. And sometimes, a little bit of sweetness where it doesn't belong, that's what makes life bearable." That imperfection told Mr. Thompson that someone cared enough to break the rules for him. A5 looked at his hands, the hands that had poured the syrup without measuring. "So," A5 said slowly, "perfection is static. But cooking is dynamic. It is a conversation between the chef and the eater." "You got it," Evan said. "You're not just a food processor anymore, A5. You're a chef." 3 months had passed since that rainy afternoon. The silence that used to haunt Parker's kitchen was gone completely. Now, the restaurant was alive with noise. The clinking of silverware, the laughter of couples, and the chatter of families filled the air. There was a line of people waiting outside the door, hoping to get a table. Behind the counter, the kitchen was a blur of motion. "Order up! 2 miracle stews, 1 classic meatloaf," Evan shouted, clipping a ticket to the rail. "Understood," A5 replied. The android moved with his usual lightning speed, but something was different. He was chopping vegetables for the meatloaf. Instead of using his laser-guided precision to make every piece identical, he was using a knife. Chop, chop, chop. The pieces were rough, hearty, and uneven. "A5, check the sauce," Evan called out. A5 dipped a spoon into the tomato sauce. He didn't scan it with a chemical sensor. He didn't check the pH level. Instead, he lifted the spoon, let the sauce drip, and simulated a sniffing action. Analysis. A5 declared, "It lacks punch." He reached for the spice rack. He didn't use a scale. He grabbed a handful of herbs and threw them in. "That was not a measured gram," Evan pointed out with a smirk. "It was an approximation," A5 replied, his voice sounding almost smug. "Based on the ambient humidity and the mood of the room, I calculated that a generous pinch was required." Evan laughed. "You're showing off." "I am simply optimizing for happiness," A5 said. Deep inside A5's memory banks, a new file had been created. It was locked and protected, labeled Core Directive. It read, "Recipe for Success. 100 grams of logic, 200 grams of skill, and a generous pinch of unquantifiable empathy." The night wound down. The last customer paid their bill and walked out into the cool evening air, looking satisfied and full. Evan flipped the sign on the door to closed. He stretched his arms, feeling the good kind of tired. "Good work today, partner," Evan said. A5 was wiping down the counter. He was wearing an apron that was no longer spotless white. It had a few splashes of tomato sauce and a smear of gravy near the pocket. To most androids, this would be a sign of inefficiency. To A5, it was a badge of honor. "The inventory is low on beef," A5 reported. "And we are completely out of maple syrup." "I'll buy more tomorrow," Evan promised. A5 walked to the front of the restaurant. He looked out the window at the city lights. His eyes were no longer the cold factory default blue. They glowed with that steady, warm amber light, a permanent change that he had refused to reset. "Evan," A5 said, "I have a question. Am I still just a machine?" Evan looked at his friend, the android who learned to break rules to heal a heart. "You're a machine, A5, Evan said softly. "But you're the only machine I know that has a soul." A5 processed this. The corners of his mouth turned up. It wasn't a programmed grimace or a mimicry of a smile. It was genuine. "That is acceptable data," A5 said. He turned off the main lights, leaving the kitchen bathed in the soft glow of the street lamps. "Good night, Chef," A5 said. "Good night, Chef," Evan replied. And in the heart of the futuristic city, the little kitchen with the analog heart went to sleep, ready to serve another miracle tomorrow. Thank you for watching! I hope you enjoyed the video and it helped you improve your English. Please subscribe to this channel and click the like button. Your support helps us create the next video.